Mr. Aaron Stewart, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. Thank you for putting up the nice car wallpaper there just for me. I appreciate that.
I sure did. I'm visiting a church right now and snuck into whatever room this is, and this is what we get.
There you go. Well, thanks so much for hanging out. Really appreciate your time and for you to take a few minutes out of your conference to chat with me. So I'd love to accomplish a couple of things. So I want to learn a little bit about you and your story. I want folks to kind of know the genesis of Planning Center. And then I want to talk about some of your new music, your new album. I know you kind of do that as well as Planning Center. So let's kind of dive in. Take me back a little bit. Take me back probably 20 years at this point, right? On kind
Yeah.
of how you got started. You were a worship pastor at a church back then, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was. After college, I was kind of like part-time worship director or anyway at a church, and then my first full-time job was at a church in the Palm Springs, California area as one of their. I don't remember what the title was. Maybe it was music director. I don't think it was pastor in the name at then, but it was a really big church, and I was over the me and another guy sort of shared the blended service. I did every other week, and he did the other weeks with the choir. And he was like the one that leaned slightly more traditional, and I was the one that leaned slightly more contemporary. And so, but it was still all one the blended service. Yeah. So I was just worship pastor at that church when at with my worship team there. Met my friend Jeff, and he was in our arts department as well. And the two of us sort of saw some of the problems we were sharing with like coordinating a service across multiple different ministries, and then getting the rehearsal files to the worship team. And so we had both sort of developed our own computer systems like for that, and kind of got together and we're like, well, let's make this into an online thing that lots of people can use.
So this was like pre Facebook. This was pre like some of the internet was just kind of starting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I started my job at that church in 2004. We didn't start what became Planning Center until 2005, but like Facebook didn't even really like launch big until 2006 or so. iPhone didn't come out until 2007. So it was definitely in that early age of sort of the new internet back then.
So how did it kind of take off from there? How did that your church kind of move into the birth of Planning Center? What did that kind of genesis look like?
Yeah, so I was only at that church for about a year and a half. And then I moved to a church in Las Vegas, the literal last place that I thought I would ever be, and loved it there. And so I was there for 6 years. And so that church, plus the church that Jeff was still at in Palm Springs, we were both using the earliest versions of Planning Center. And as a worship pastor and as someone with a music degree from Azusa Pacific University in California, I had a lot of worship pastor friends across the country who had graduated and done that. And I'm like, I know other people would use this. So I had also personally been to Saddleback's Purpose Driven Worship Conference for the few years. I'm like, you know what? We should see if we can get a booth and tell people about it there. So we did. And Jeff took out the only loan that we've ever taken out, which was a $10,000 loan to sort of like get some booth materials and pay for our booth and all that kind of stuff. And we just had the cheesiest rinky dink booth that you could imagine there. It was actually pretty good for people that didn't know what they were doing. And we sort of launched it, and a lot of people showed a lot of interest in it. And that was kind of like where we launched in July of 2006. And then we got enough signups and enough people kind of using it over those next 6 months that we then, in January of 2007, we took out our first ad in Worship Leader magazine. And that was really the catalyst that really started to get more people finding out about us and sort of joining on.
So what were some of those first problems that you guys had to face? As you gain more customers, what were like, oh, this is great, but I wish I had this, or this is a problem? What are some of the early problems that you guys had to overcome?
Well, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you mean, but the one of the biggest problems that we had early on is that as a startup company, on the internet, which was still relatively new at the time. We had a lot of churches using us at a certain point in our first year. A lot from coming from zero. And so enough that it mattered. And we were posting blog posts all the time of like what the new features were. And we were really very interactive with our customers for what they wanted to have happen next. And then all of a sudden one day, Planning Center just went down and nobody could get to it. And this is when we were like early stages trying to develop a reputation of like, hey, can we trust the internet to actually be the thing? And then all of a sudden it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so we contacted our ISP, like our internet service provider, and they were like, everything's fine. And we're like, because Planning Center, our code was not down. We were fine. It's just the computers that housed our code in some server place were not sending Planning Center out to people. And so we freaked out. We started to do lots of blog posts and tell our customers, hey, we're on this. We're going to fix it as soon as possible. Jeff had decided it's been an hour and they're not even contacting with us. So communicating with us. So he drove over to this server house like an hour away and decided to like literally take the computers, our servers. By the time he got there, or maybe before, I don't remember the exact details of the story. We basically found out that they were lying to us. They had gone bankrupt from not paying their bills and they were not going to ever be back up again, but they were not telling us that. And so,
oh, goodness.
Yeah. So Jeff luckily had already been in the process of like moving our stuff to a different place. So he basically confiscated our servers from them, drove across town, sped through the migration that was going to happen, calmly over the next few weeks and like made it happen in the next day or so that we could be back up. It was a crazy time for us. But we were very transparent with our customers, and what could have been an opportunity for disaster ended up being one of the best things that happened to us, because all the churches that used us, what they appreciated was our transparency in the whole thing. And, most people were like, internet's going to have problems. There's always going to be things, but knowing that you're working on it, knowing we can trust you, knowing you're going to tell us what's going on is what we really care about. And so we were surprised and very blessed that didn't like totally shut us down, but actually helped us grow faster after that than before.
So you have a little bit different kind of blend of skill sets. You kind of have this kind of creative worship leader and then kind of technical software kind of side to you. So, yeah. So how do those kind of two skill sets blend together for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
Am I right in that?
You are absolutely correct. A lot of musicians are more known for being the creative, sort of like unorganized types. I know that is not actually the case widespread. I have plenty of them who are just as obsessive sometimes as I can be. But yeah, I mean, my dad was very creative. My mom was very organized. And so I kind of got the best of both of those worlds. And so I've always, I started playing piano when I was 3.5 years old. And my degree is in music, composition and education. And so I started writing songs when I was 13. And on the worship team, and I played saxophone and trumpet and piano and sang and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, in middle school, I was building computers with my dad and like figuring out what a sound card was and a modem and like hooking up to all these things. And so when it came time to have my first worship position at a church, it was like I think the thing that really comes down to is I'm always in problem solving solution. Like problem solving mode. I'm looking for problems. I'm looking for how can we make this more efficient? How can this thing be better so that we can get rid of all this annoying stuff to unlock the creativity that we want to have? So yeah, I mean, it's a blend of both of those things that you don't find that often, but it is a cool way that I feel like God has equipped me to be in the exact place that I'm in.
And you didn't move to Planning Center full time right away, did you? You kind of stayed on as a worship pastor at a church for several years, right?
Yeah. So Jeff and I think I said this, but Jeff Berg is our CEO and the owner of Planning Center. I co-founded it with him, but he stayed at the church in Palm Desert and I moved to Las Vegas. And while he was doing all the coding and like starting the business up, I was consulting and working with him on like how the feature should work. My church was actually the only one at that point that was using it. And so I actually did not feel called to not be a full-time worship pastor for the first 6 years that Planning Center was starting. So I actually stayed at my church in Las Vegas as a worship director for the first, well, really 5 years of Planning Center, but the first year before we kind of launched. And yeah, and it was a long time before I felt the Lord saying to me, yes, it is actually time for you to move on. In that time, I was answering Planning Center support on nights and weekends. I was traveling around and doing conferences. I was doing all the video tutorials, but that was like my side job. And about 5 years in, Jeff had been asking me, hey, you want to go full time? You want to go full time? And I had always said no. And then all of a sudden, I had already felt, it was like, you know what? I think it's actually time now. This is weird. And he called me expecting to have to like fight me into it. Or actually, he expected to call saying, I have to hire somebody else to do your job full time. And he like had a speech already, and I cut him off, and I was like, I'm ready to go. And he was like, wait, what? I thought, and I was like, nope, it's time. So let's do it.
Awesome. Does it get old to you, or are you immune to people using Planning Center? Like if you see it out and about, people, on computer screens and stuff, or is it still exciting to you?
You would think that it would be old after 18 years, but I I go to churches frequently, especially to do conferences. That's where I'm actually at right now. And even at a church where it's not that weird to see Planning Center being used, when I pass by someone in their office or someone in their, in the lobby or in a coffee shop or whatever, and I see that services interface on their computer, like it's sort of like, I don't want to say overwhelms, but I'm sort of shocked and grateful every time. And I'm like, oh man, like you just forget. I'm in my office most of the time working on future things, and you just forget. So it doesn't get old.
We feel that at Church Visuals a lot, and if we're making graphics or video for an Awana or Answers in Genesis or some ministry or organization or church, and the video will land at conferences or will land across the world somewhere. It is pretty amazing and humbling to go, that was me fighting with pixels and keyframes in my home office with the dog running around and my kids yelling in the back. Like that's how that was made.
Yeah.
And I you're seeing God use it around the world. Do you
Mhm.
you still feel that?
Oh, I mean, for sure. Yeah. People will never know the heartache that went into this thing that they're using, or all the things behind the scenes. But that's fun. We were it's weird now. Planning Center we did like a retreat at Disneyland, and we had Planning Center shirts on, and so like just people at the end of the day were like, we got recognized so many times from people that were Planning Center. We use that at our church. And it's just random like designers or support people or developers like being recognized just because they have Planning Center on their shirt. It's just a cool reminder of, actually, I said this to someone at a panel a couple weeks ago at a conference, that like, I think I am more privileged than many people, that I get to see more of the impact that I have. I think everybody has a lot of impact in the thing.
Yeah.
You never know what you're doing, even as like a worship pastor, like planning a worship set, you don't know how those songs resonate with somebody at home, or all those kind of things. I just get to have people see me wearing a t-shirt, and they get to
Right.
come up and they tell me directly. But like, so I feel really, really blessed to be able to see some of the fruits of those things in ways that we all have, but might not see as much.
Yeah. Good. All right. So I'm gonna ask you something a little bit different. So we are all about helping ministry leaders visually communicate the gospel. So through graphics and video. So how important over the years has the visual nature of Planning Center meant to you guys? Maybe that's the visual appeal of the website, making sure it's clean, organized, easy to navigate, understand, that it's functional, but also is visually appealing. How important is that kind of stuff to you guys?
That's almost everything. I mean, that is of It's not everything, but it is paramount importance. I think one of the reasons that Planning Center was so successful early on is what people would say is, oh, it's so pretty, it's so easy to use. And back then, web software wasn't even a thing. You couldn't use software online. Like you said, Facebook was kind of one of the people that kind of pioneered that, and they had barely released. And so what we were used to was like Excel and Microsoft Access and like more database driven things that didn't focus on that as much. And so the software that we like to use is all intuitive and pretty and easy. And so we always want to build things that are inspiring to us. And so from the beginning, that was a key differentiator from Planning Center, is how good it looked and how in turn easy that made it to use. And that has lasted with us through today. I mean, on staff, we have 24 designers, I think, at Planning Center. So between somewhere around there, I don't know the exact number, but it's a large number of people who are working on the design, making sure it's good, making sure it's intuitive, because that's very important.
How about when it gets into services? And you may or may not be able to speak to this, probably as a worship pastor, definitely. How important is the visual media? If I'm a ministry leader trying to craft my services through using Planning Center or other means, how important is the visual component? That's graphics, that's video, that's the look and feel to reaching an audience. How do your visuals matter when it comes to communicating the gospel?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm now answering this question as Aaron Stewart, an individual, not necessarily based on Planning Center, because I don't have data or stats or anything like this. But I think it's incredibly important, and even more so nowadays in 2024 with everybody on TikTok and Instagram, which are purely visual platforms. Like, people are trained that like the only thing that matters is visuals nowadays. If you don't have a music video for your new song, like, people aren't even going to listen to it. Like, in some senses, I know for me, I'm a visual person. And so there's lots of different styles of learning, but like the way that I remember things is by seeing them. And so when you have something captivating for me to see, that helps it like get into my heart, get into my mind a lot better than just hearing words about it.
Good. What are some things that you wish you would have known 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it comes to Planning Center or leading worship or communicating the gospel, just in ministry in general, maybe? What are some things, man, I wish I would have known these couple of things 20 years ago?
Oh, that's just like the biggest bucket to ever unpack. Things that I wish that I would have known, so much of my learning now is sort of like now business related. Like, that's the thing that I don't have any schooling or training on. And the thing that actually kind of saddens me about the church a little bit is that so much of church leadership, there are plenty of churches who have like lots of people who have a good business sense and know how to run a church in the right ways, like an organization. And I think even as I was a worship pastor, like, what does the pastor part of worship pastor mean? I got put into those positions. No one taught me anything. No one told me what was expected. I didn't even learn that at school. I learned the music parts of that. No one told me how to be a good team leader. No one told me how to be a good pastor. No one told me how to do any of those things. It is just, you can play the piano, you can sing, be this. And then I was good at that. And then you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And now at Planning Center, having to lead a team, a company of like 180 people. Now, I'm not responsible for all of those people. I directly lead like 25 of them now. But like, being a good like manager, which really, like in a church, like a team leader, like knowing how to care about your people, knowing about people's different personalities, like all those kinds of things that are more like people skills. And I want to say business and management, but I don't think that's what it is. I think you have to do that in business to survive. But I think so many of those tools about like how to shepherd people like are things that I wish that I would have spent more time uh, seeking out ways to do that rather than just focusing on like the practical, like action oriented parts of ministry.
Hmm. Good. All right, let's kind of switch gears and talk about your music. You mentioned that people, if you don't have a music video, then people don't find you, and that is absolutely true. There's so many stats of that people watch music to listen to music, right? YouTube is the second largest search engine, so people are finding your music based on the music video or sometimes just a static shot on YouTube and just playing the
Yeah.
music. So tell me about your music, your new album. You got a brand new album out that just came out recently, right?
I do. Yes, I don't get to talk about this in planning center circles that much. It's a separate thing. I never want to like use this platform for like my personal gain or whatever. But if you ask, I'm happy to talk about
Yeah.
it.
The door's wide open to you, buddy. Go for it.
Thanks. Well, okay. So I've always, worship and Christian music has always been at my heart, and so I actually got invited 7 years ago to this kind of like professional songwriting circle, and so I go and do these songwriting retreats, and so I've had songs cut by a whole bunch of different Christian artists at this point. But in the meantime, I just have songs that come to me that like are just about anything. They are about my family. They're about like learning how, whatever. And so over like since 2009, I don't know, I write like one song a year that doesn't have anywhere else to go. It's just something that is in my heart. And so earlier this year, I wrote a song for my nieces. They're 3 and 5 years old, and I spent a lot of time with them. And I was like, oh man, I wrote this thing, and like before they're old, I want to have this song recorded. So I started to think, well, I'm going to record this song. And then I started to look and I'm like, I've got these other like 11 songs that have nowhere to go either. I'm just going to put these on a project. And so I spent the first, 7 months of this year, 2024, recording all those. And I released a pop album. It's called Traveling Light, and it's just a lot of just like uplifting songs that none of them are Christian in nature, but they are all inspired by my worldview, obviously. And so it's just kind of fun to have those I don't know, positive songs that speak to just like other random parts of I don't know my life and experience.
Yeah. Talk to me about. I know you did a Christmas album. Your Christmas album was like your first project, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I did that in 2021. I throw a big Christmas party at my house every year. And so for many years, each year I would do a big new piano and vocal like arrangement of some sort of carol. And so after 7 or 8 years, I'm like, man, I got enough of these. I should do something with it. But like, I'm a person who we sort of already talked, like I'm creative, but also logical. And those two parts of my brain like are fighting with each other. So I was like, man, I want to record these. But then I was like, yeah, but nobody's going to buy it because you're not an artist. Nobody's going to know who you are. And so ultimately I was like, well, I just am going to do it anyway because I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because it's fun and I have these songs. And so I went and I spent a year and I got a live orchestra. I flew to Nashville and I like had a 60-piece orchestra record on all this stuff, like super, super, like that orchestra recording day was like seriously maybe the best day of my life. It was so awesome. And so, so produced that Christmas album in 2021 and I still love it. And that has been pretty successful. So yeah.
Man, if you hadn't have done it, you would always wondered, should I have done it? Or so good for you. And you've done several music videos and stuff like that. Kind of hit on that visual component again. How is the music videos or how is the visuals kind of help people find you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I want people to see something or, on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, people don't read. Like we know that even just in planning center, people do not read. Like, we will have a gigantic banner that launches and that like shoves in your face, look, chat has just released in Planning Center, and they like have to dismiss it. And the thing that I get people coming to the booth all the time is, I wish you would have a chat feature. I'm like, okay, well, you clicked dismiss on the thing that said, welcome, there's a chat feature. People just don't read. And I'm not, that's not a slam. That's just something you need to know.
Yep.
They don't read, but they see. And so like when I want to share something on social media, I need some sort of visual for them to even want to be interested in the first place, because they're also just not really going to click a link to listen to something as much if I don't give them some visual way to be interested in the first place. So I spent some time I did 3 music videos for my Christmas album. And that was just a super fun process to do.
Yeah, good. All right, let me end on a Planning Center question for you. Any sneak peeks, anything on the horizon that you can share?
The big thing that we have been working on kind of already launched, and that I just actually talked about it, is our big chat feature. But we've had chat in Planning Center groups for a long time. And we decided being able to communicate with your congregation, with them and with each other, is just so important. And so we decided we want to make our chat feature like a global thing. So it's not just for small groups. So we've launched it for small groups, and now for all of your serving teams. We've got some new features coming out maybe in the next week or two to make it even easier to start chats from within the services app and website. Right now, you have to find the chat icon at the top of the screen, but really soon there's going to be other chat buttons. Anywhere you see an email button, there's also going to be a chat button to expose that to people a little bit more. And then I think the other next thing that I'm personally excited about, especially for services and that relates to even video and stuff, is we just started work yet. Now I'm not allowed, we don't talk about future things. So I'm sort of breaking the rules here because we've already started, because there's always a chance that something goes wrong and we don't release it. So we usually don't talk about things until they're done. I'm pretty sure that this one's going to go well. So, but basically we're splitting out the permissions. Right now, your services permissions are just like the permission for everything. And that kind of stops people from using services in more ways that we want them to use it. Because you're like, well, if I want high school person or somebody at this other campus to be able to schedule the ushers and greeters, they now have permission to edit my whole song and media library in Planning Center. So we're splitting the song and media permissions into their own permissions. So you can have, this person can administrate all the stuff, but cannot even get to the songs page or to the media page, which should allow people to have more trust in their organization, to allow more people to be organized and do what they want to do.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you for that. Looking forward to ways to partner with you guys and to cheer you guys on in ministry. So, man, thank you for all that you do. And I know that it's just been a tool that a lot of people have used, and you guys have not only done a great job building it, but just your heart's in the right place of how to serve the church. And that comes through very well. So, man, thank you so much for this, and appreciate the time very much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals, executive produced and edited by Carl Barnhill, title and show graphics by Angie Lomas. For more resources to help you visually communicate the gospel, visit churchvisuals.com.